The morning Rebecca Hart vanished, May was mucking out the horse stalls. Her hands were raw, fingernails black with dirt, the kind of grime that never fully washed out no matter how hard you scrubbed. She'd been at it since dawn, working through the list of chores her mother had left pinned to the kitchen wall. Clean the stalls, mend the fence by the north pasture, check the water pump. The same damn list every day, while Rebecca slept until 10 and practiced her embroidery by the window, backlit like some kind of angel in a painting. May didn't mind the work. Not really. It gave her something to do with her hands, something to focus on besides the sick knot that had been living in her stomach for the past 3 weeks, ever since her father had announced Rebecca's engagement to Caleb Rohr. She drove the pitchfork into the hay with more force than necessary. Caleb Rohr, son of Edmund Rohr, who owned half the county and had his fingers in the other half. The Rohr Ranch sprawled across 5,000 acres of prime grazing land, with water rights that made every other rancher in the territory salivate with envy. The Rohrs had money, power, political connections that reached all the way to the territorial governor. And the Harts? They had debt. Mountains of it. 3 bad winters had gutted their cattle operation. Her father had borrowed against the land, then borrowed more when the first loans came due, until they were drowning in interest payments and the bank was making sympathetic noises about foreclosure. The only thing standing between the Hart family and complete ruin was this marriage, this alliance, this sale of her sister to the highest bidder. May yanked the pitchfork free and moved to the next stall. She'd seen Caleb Rohr exactly twice in her life. Once at a cattlemen's association meeting when she was 14, where he'd barely glanced at her. And again last year at the Christmas social, where he danced with Rebecca 3 times while May stood against the wall with the other spinsters and widows, pretending not to notice. He was handsome, she supposed, in that hard-edged frontier way. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and darker eyes that gave away exactly nothing. 28 years old and unmarried, which had caused plenty of speculation until Edmund Rohr made it clear his son was simply being selective, waiting for the right match, the right opportunity. Apparently that opportunity was a 19-year-old blonde with a 20-inch waist and the kind of face that made men stupid. May stabbed at the soiled hay with particular venom. "May! May!" Her mother's voice cut through the morning air, shrill with panic. May dropped the pitchfork and ran. She found her mother in Rebecca's bedroom, still in her nightgown, gray hair wild around her face. The room was empty, the bed was made, and pinned to the pillow was a single sheet of paper covered in Rebecca's looping handwriting. "She's gone," her mother's voice cracked. "She left, this morning, before dawn." May took the note with fingers that had gone numb. "I can't do this. I won't be sold like livestock. By the time you read this, I'll be on the eastbound stage. Don't try to find me. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry enough to stay." The world tilted sideways. "What are we going to do?" Her mother clutched at May's sleeve. "The wedding is in 3 hours. Everyone will be there. The Rohrs, the banker, half the county. Edmund Rohr will destroy us. He'll call in every favor, turn every rancher against us. We'll lose everything, everything." May read the note again, but the words didn't change. "Where's Papa?" "Gone to town already, to make sure everything's ready." Her mother's laugh was ragged, broken. "He doesn't know. Oh God, he doesn't know." May's mind was racing, cataloging disasters, calculating odds. The stage left at 6. Rebecca had at least 2 hours head start, maybe 3. Even if they rode hard, they'd never catch her before she crossed into the next territory. "We have to tell the Rohrs." May kept her voice steady, even though her heart was slamming against her ribs. "We have to apologize, offer to repay." "Repay?" Her mother's eyes were wild. "Repay with what? We have nothing, less than nothing." She grabbed May's shoulders, nails digging in through the worn fabric of her work dress. "You have to go." "What?" "To the church. You have to go to the church and apologize. Beg their forgiveness. You're her sister. You have to make them understand, I had nothing to do with this." May pulled back, but her mother's grip was iron. "You're a Hart. That's enough." Her mother was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the powder on her cheeks. "Please, May, please. You're good at talking to people. You can make them listen. You can fix this." May stared at her mother's desperate face and felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd spent 22 years being the dependable one, the practical one, the one who fixed problems and cleaned up messes and never ever complained. While Rebecca practiced her piano and perfected her watercolors, May learned bookkeeping and animal husbandry and how to stretch a dollar until it screamed. While Rebecca flirted at socials and collected admirers like pressed flowers, May memorized market reports and negotiated with feed suppliers and kept the ranch running on spit and determination. And now Rebecca had run. Of course she had, because Rebecca had always been able to run. Rebecca was beautiful, delicate, valuable. Rebecca had options. May had work. "I'll go," she heard herself say. Her mother sagged with relief. "Thank you. Oh, thank you, baby girl. I'll need the carriage, and I'll need to clean up." "Yes, yes, of course." Her mother was already moving, pulling open Rebecca's wardrobe. "You'll need a proper dress, something appropriate. Here, Rebecca's blue silk, the one with the lace collar." "That won't fit me." May's voice was flat. Her mother paused, holding the dress against her chest. They both knew it was true. Rebecca was tiny, delicate, built like a china doll. May was taller, broader, solid in the way of women who spent their lives doing actual physical labor. "The gray wool, then," her mother said after a moment. "It's plain, but it's respectable." "Fine." May washed in cold water from the basin, scrubbing at the dirt under her nails until her fingers were raw. She twisted her brown hair into a tight bun, pinned it savagely. The gray wool dress was too short in the sleeves and too tight across the shoulders, but it would have to do. In the mirror, she looked exactly like what she was, a farm girl playing dress-up. The ride to town took 40 minutes. May drove the carriage herself, hands steady on the reins, while her mother sat beside her twisting a handkerchief into shreds. "What will you say?" her mother asked for the 5th time. "The truth. That Rebecca panicked, that she's young and foolish, that we're deeply sorry and will do everything in our power to make this right. And if they won't listen, then we're finished," May thought. But she said, "They'll listen." They wouldn't. She knew they wouldn't, but what choice did she have? The church came into view just after 10 o'clock. It sat on a small rise at the edge of town, white clapboard gleaming in the morning sun, and surrounding it, everywhere, were carriages, dozens of them. The entire county had turned out for this wedding. May's stomach turned to lead. "Maybe we should go around back," her mother whispered. "Find Edmund Rohr privately. Explain before—" "No." May's voice was hard. "If we slink in like criminals, they'll treat us like criminals. We go in the front. We hold our heads up." Her mother made a small, wounded sound, but didn't argue. May tied off the carriage and stepped down. Her boots hit the dusty ground with a sound like a judge's gavel. Around them, people were staring, whispering. They'd expected to see Rebecca, the bride. Instead, they got May in an ill-fitting dress, arriving an hour late. May forced herself to walk toward the church doors. Each step felt like wading through mud. The doors were closed. Through them, she could hear the low murmur of restless voices. 200 people, packed into pews, waiting. May put her hand on the door handle. It was cold despite the summer heat. "You can do this," her mother whispered behind her. "You're strong. You've always been strong." May almost laughed. Strong. What a useless thing to be. She pulled the door open. The sound of it, the heavy creak of old hinges, cut through the murmur like a knife. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on her with the weight of a physical blow. The church was decorated for a wedding. White ribbons hung from the pews. Wildflowers in mason jars lined the aisle. Someone had even brought in a piano, positioned near the front, where a thin woman in black sat with her hands frozen over the keys. And at the altar, standing beside a sweating minister, was Caleb Rohr. He looked exactly like May remembered. Tall, dark-haired, face carved from granite. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her family's entire annual income, and he was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Next to him, in the front pew, sat Edmund Rohr, Caleb's father, 60 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had probably never smiled without calculating the cost. His eyes were chips of ice as they tracked May's progress down the aisle. May made herself walk. One foot in front of the other, the gray wool dress whispered against her legs. Her boots were too loud on the wooden floor. Behind her, her mother had started crying. Quiet, hitching sobs that May felt like brands against her spine. Halfway down the aisle, the whispers started. "That's the sister. The plain one. Where's Rebecca? Do you think—" She wouldn't dare. Poor thing, look at her. May's face burned, but she kept walking. She kept her eyes forward, fixed on a point just past Caleb Roar's left shoulder. She would get through this. She would apologize. She would salvage what she could from this disaster. And then she would go home and figure out how to save her family from ruin. She reached the front of the church. The minister looked confused, glancing between her and Caleb like he was waiting for someone to explain the joke. May opened her mouth. Where is my son's bride?" Edmund Roar's voice cracked across the church like a whip. He stood slowly, deliberately, each movement calculated for maximum effect. The whole church seemed to hold its breath. May forced herself to meet his eyes. "Rebecca isn't coming." The silence that followed was absolute. "I see." Edmund's voice was soft now, dangerous. "And you thought you would come in her place? To what? Apologize? Beg forgiveness?" "Yes." May's voice didn't shake. That was something. "My sister made a terrible mistake. She panicked. She's young and she humiliated my son." Edmund took a step toward her. "She made an agreement, a contract, and then she ran like a coward, leaving my son standing at the altar in front of the entire county." "I know, and an apology means nothing." Edmund's eyes were hard as coffin nails. "Your family gave their word. Your father shook my hand and promised me an alliance, a merger of our families. And now you come here, wearing a dress that doesn't fit, expecting what? Sympathy? Understanding?" May felt her spine stiffen. "I expect nothing, but my family's debt—" "Your family's debt is the least of your concerns." Edmund smiled, and it was the coldest thing May had ever seen. "I could destroy you, foreclose on your land before sunset, spread word to every rancher and merchant in the territory that the Harts are oath breakers. Liars. You'd be ruined, completely. No one would hire you, no one would sell to you. Within a month, you'd be begging in the streets." May's mother made a broken sound behind her. "But I won't do that," Edmund continued, and his smile widened, "because I'm a reasonable man, and because I believe in honoring agreements." Something in his tone made May's blood run cold. "The contract was for a marriage," Edmund said. "The merger of our families through the union of my son and a Hart daughter. It didn't specify which daughter." The church seemed to tilt. "No," May heard herself say. "No, that's— You're here. You're of age, unmarried." Edmund gestured to Caleb, who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, his dark eyes still fixed on May with that same unreadable expression. "My son needs a wife. Your family needs salvation. It seems like a simple solution." Laughter rippled through the church, cruel, mocking laughter. "Look at her," someone whispered, not quietly enough. "Next to Rebecca? It's like comparing a mule to a thoroughbred." Poor Caleb. He's really going to go through with it? For 5,000 acres? He'd marry a fence post. May's hands clenched into fists. Heat crawled up her neck, burning in her cheeks. This was worse than any nightmare. Worse than anything she could have imagined. "I won't," she started, but Edmund cut her off. "Won't what? Save your family? Honor your sister's commitment?" He leaned closer, and his voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "You came here to fix this mess. So fix it, or watch everything you love burn to ash." May looked past him to Caleb. Surely he would object. Surely he wouldn't agree to this farce. But Caleb just stood there, silent as stone. The minister cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps the young lady needs time to consider. She's had enough time." Edmund stepped back, raising his voice so the whole church could hear. "The choice is simple, Miss Hart. Marry my son right now, in front of all these witnesses, and your family's debt is forgiven. Your ranch is saved, or walk out that door and accept the consequences." The church was so quiet May could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She thought about her mother, sobbing behind her. Her father, who'd worked himself half to death trying to keep their ranch afloat. The land that had been in their family for 3 generations. All of it balanced on this moment. "Well," Edmund's voice was silk over steel. "What's it going to be?" May looked at Caleb again, really looked at him. trying to find some hint of mercy, some sign that he was as appalled by this as she was. His face gave away nothing. She thought about Rebecca, probably halfway to Denver by now, free and unburdened. Rebecca, who'd never had to make a hard choice in her entire life. Rebecca, who'd always been protected, sheltered, treated like something precious, while May learned to be useful. And now this, the ultimate usefulness, the final service to her family, marry a stranger to pay her sister's debt. "I need to speak to Mr. Rohr," May said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Alone." Edmund's eyebrows rose. "I don't think... If you want me to agree to this, I need 5 minutes with your son, alone." For the first time, something flickered across Caleb's face. Surprise, maybe, or interest. Edmund studied her for a long moment, then stepped back with a shallow nod. 5 minutes. The vestry. The small room behind the altar was barely larger than a closet. It smelled like old books and candle wax. Caleb closed the door behind them, and suddenly the space felt even smaller. May turned to face him, arms crossed over her chest. "Are you going to say anything? Or are you going to let your father run your life like you're 12 years old?" It was possibly the stupidest thing she could have said, but she was done with careful, done with quiet. Something shifted in Caleb's expression, not quite a smile. "You want me to argue with him in front of 200 people? I want you to have an opinion about who you marry." "I do have an opinion." "Which is?" "That I need a wife, today, and you're here." May laughed, sharp and bitter. "How romantic." "This isn't about romance." Caleb's voice was level, almost gentle. "This is about business, about land and money and alliances. You know that. Your father knew it when he arranged your sister's marriage. Rebecca knew it when she agreed. And then she ran." "Yes, she did." Caleb tilted his head slightly. "But you didn't." May felt something twist in her chest. "Because I'm the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who fixes things." "Exactly." Caleb took a step closer, not threatening, just close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I don't need delicate. I don't need beautiful. I need someone who can run a household, manage accounts, handle problems without falling apart." "You need a business partner." "Yes, not a wife. In my experience, the best marriages are business partnerships." Caleb's gaze didn't waver. "My father and mother had that. 30 years of mutual respect and shared goals, no drama, no hysteria. Just two people working toward the same end." "How cold." "How practical." Caleb paused. "You're practical, aren't you, Miss Hart?" May wanted to hit him, or scream, or run the way Rebecca had run, but she was practical. That was the problem. "What exactly are you offering?" she asked. "A marriage in name and legal standing, separate bedrooms. No expectations beyond what's necessary for appearances. You'll have full authority over the household accounts and staff. You'll be financially secure for the rest of your life. And in exchange, you manage my home. You host when required. You present a united front in public." He paused. "And you don't embarrass me." May's laugh was sharp. "Like my sister did?" "Your sister was never going to survive as a Rohr wife. She's too soft, too easily swayed." Caleb's eyes held hers. "You're not soft." It wasn't a compliment, just a statement of fact. "And if I say no? Then you walk out of here and take your chances. Maybe you find another buyer for your ranch. Maybe you talk the bank into extending your loans." His expression didn't change. "Or maybe your family loses everything, and you spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have prevented it." May felt the trap close around her like iron jaws. "I need an answer," Caleb said. "They're waiting." She thought about her mother's face, her father's exhausted eyes, the land she'd grown up on, the barn she'd helped build, the horses she'd trained with her own hands, all of it on the auction block if she walked away. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I want it in writing, the arrangement, the separate bedrooms, my authority over the household." Something that might have been respect flickered across Caleb's face. "Done. And I want my family's debt erased completely, not just postponed, erased. Already agreed to. And," May swallowed hard, "and you don't touch me. Not without my permission. Caleb's expression went carefully blank. Understood. She should say no. She should walk out of this church and let the chips fall where they would. She should be like Rebecca, brave enough to choose herself. But May had never been brave. She'd only ever been necessary. Fine, she heard herself say. I'll do it. Caleb held out his hand. May looked at it for a long moment. Broad palm, calloused fingers, a working man's hand despite his wealth, and then shook it once, firmly, the way you'd seal any business deal. Let's get this over with, she said. When they emerged from the vestry, the church erupted in whispers. Edmund stood waiting, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Well? He asked. We have an agreement, Caleb said. The whispers turned into a dull roar. May caught fragments as she walked back to the altar. Actually going through with it? Poor man? She must have trapped him somehow. Not even pretty. The minister looked like he wanted to bolt. I'll need to make some adjustments to the ceremony. The names are the only thing that needs changing, Edmund said coldly. Everything else proceeds as planned. May stood next to Caleb at the altar. She could feel the weight of 200 stares boring into her back. Could hear her mother crying harder now, whether from relief or shame, May couldn't tell. The minister opened his book with shaking hands. Dearly beloved, he began, voice cracking. The ceremony was a blur. Words washed over May without meaning. She was aware of Caleb next to her, solid and immovable as a boulder, aware of the church's oppressive heat, aware of every whisper, every judgment, every pitying or mocking glance. Do you, Caleb Rohr, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady. And do you, May Hart, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? May's throat was dust dry. The words stuck like burrs. Caleb's hand found hers, not gentle, just firm. A reminder. I do, May whispered. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you man and wife. The minister snapped his book shut like he was afraid it might bite him. You may kiss the bride. May's heart stopped. Caleb turned to her. For a moment she thought he might actually do it, kiss her in front of all these people, seal this farce with one final humiliation. But he just leaned close, lips brushing near her ear, and whispered, Breathe. Then he stepped back, took her hand, and faced the congregation. Ladies and gentlemen, Edmund's voice rang out, may I present Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Rohr. The applause was scattered, uncertain, nothing like what it would have been for Rebecca. May let Caleb lead her down the aisle. Each step felt surreal, like she was watching herself from a great distance. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be her life. But the ring on her finger was real. Cold metal, slightly too large, sliding loose when she moved her hand. They emerged into blinding sunlight. Someone had prepared a carriage, black lacquered wood with the Rohr brand burned into the side. Caleb handed her up without ceremony, then climbed in beside her. The driver clicked his tongue and the horses lurched forward. May watched her mother's carriage grow smaller in the distance. Watched the church fade. Watched her entire life disappear behind a cloud of dust. Where are we going? She asked. Home. Caleb didn't look at her. My home. You're home now. I don't have any of my things. We'll send for them. I should tell my parents goodbye. You'll see them at the reception. Reception? May's voice pitched higher. There's a reception? Of course there's a reception. My father planned for 200 guests. Caleb finally turned to look at her. Did you think we'd just disappear? I thought... May didn't know what she thought. That they'd go somewhere private. That she'd have time to process what just happened. That she'd get 5 minutes to fall apart without an audience. Pull yourself together, Caleb said, not unkindly. The hard part's just starting. The Rohr Ranch appeared on the horizon like a small city. The main house was 3 stories of whitewashed stone with a wraparound porch and actual glass windows. Not shutters, but real glass that caught the sunlight and threw it back in blinding shards. Behind it sprawled a compound of outbuildings, bunkhouse, barn, smokehouse, forge, even what looked like a small schoolhouse. May had known the Rohrs were wealthy, but this was beyond anything she'd imagined. The carriage rolled to a stop in front of the main house. Caleb climbed down and offered his hand. May took it, felt the calluses scrape against her palm, and stepped onto Roarland for the first time as its mistress. The front door opened and a woman emerged, 50s, gray-haired, with a face like a closed fist. "Mrs. Porter," Caleb said, "this is my wife, May. May, this is our housekeeper." Mrs. Porter's eyes traveled over May from head to foot, cataloging every flaw. "Welcome to Thornfield Ranch, Mrs. Roar." The name hit May like a slap. Mrs. Roar. That was her now. "Thank you," she managed. "I've prepared the blue room for you." Mrs. Porter's tone suggested this was a significant concession. "I wasn't sure what you'd require, given the circumstances." "The blue room will be fine," Caleb said. "Please see that May's belongings are retrieved from the Hart Ranch before the reception." "Of course, sir." Mrs. Porter's expression didn't change, but May felt the judgment radiating off her in waves. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Polished wood floors, actual paintings on the walls. Not prints, but original oils in gilded frames. A staircase wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast. May followed Caleb up the stairs, Mrs. Porter trailing behind like a particularly hostile shadow. "This will be your room," Caleb said, opening a door on the second floor. The blue room was bigger than May's entire bedroom back home. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in blue silk. There was a wardrobe, a vanity with an actual mirror, and a door that led to what looked like a private washroom. "My room is at the end of the hall," Caleb continued. "My father's suite is on the 3rd floor. My sister Clara has the yellow room across from yours." "Sister?" May's head snapped up. "You didn't mention a sister." "Didn't I?" Caleb's tone was flat. "Clara's 25. She's lived here since our mother died 5 years ago. Runs the household, usually." He paused. "That's your job now." Wonderful. May had just inherited not only a husband, but a sister-in-law who'd been displaced from her position. "When do I meet her?" "At the reception. She's been in Denver for the past month, but she returned this morning." Something in Caleb's voice suggested this wasn't entirely welcome news. "She'll have opinions about this marriage." "Like everyone else in the county," May said bitterly. Caleb studied her for a moment. "You handled yourself well. In the church. I was humiliated." You were angry. There's a difference." He moved toward the door. "The reception starts in 2 hours. Mrs. Porter will help you prepare." "Wait." May's voice stopped him. "What are we going to tell people? About Rebecca?" "The truth." She panicked and ran. "You stepped in to honor your family's commitment." His dark eyes met hers. "You were brave and selfless." "I was grateful. It's a perfectly reasonable story." "No one will believe that." "They don't have to believe it. They just have to accept it." Caleb opened the door. "Welcome to the Roar family, May. I hope you're as tough as you look." Then he was gone. May stood in the center of the blue room, surrounded by silk and luxury and cold, impersonal beauty, and finally let herself shake. What had she done? She'd married a stranger, tied herself to a man she didn't know, didn't love, didn't even like. She'd walked into a house full of people who already hated her, the housekeeper, the sister, probably every ranch hand and servant who'd been expecting beautiful, delicate Rebecca and got plain, sturdy May instead. And in 2 hours, she'd have to face them all at a reception she didn't want, celebrating a marriage that was a lie. A knock at the door made her jump. "Mrs. Roar?" Mrs. Porter's voice. "I've brought your things from home." May opened the door to find 2 small trunks sitting in the hallway. Everything she owned in the world, packed into 2 battered boxes. Next to them stood a girl of about 16, blonde and wide-eyed. "This is Annie," Mrs. Porter said. "She'll be your lady's maid." "I don't need," May started, but Mrs. Porter was already walking away. Annie bobbed an awkward curtsy. "Pleased to meet you, ma'am." May looked at the girl, barely more than a child, terrified and trying to hide it, and felt something in her chest crack. "Have you worked here long?" May asked. 6 months, ma'am. I usually help in the kitchen, but Mrs. Porter said I should help you dress for the reception." "I can dress myself." "Oh." Annie's face fell. "Of course, ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "No, May took a breath. "I'm sorry. I'm just not used to this. Any of this." Annie's expression softened slightly. "Neither was I, when I first came. The house is very grand, but you'll learn. Everyone does. May managed a weak smile. I hope you're right. Together they unpacked May's trunks. It didn't take long. A few dresses, all worn and practical. Work boots, gloves, some books, accounts, and animal husbandry, nothing frivolous. One good shawl her grandmother had knitted. Annie held up the gray wool dress May had worn to the wedding. Should I have this cleaned, ma'am? Burn it, May said. Annie's eyes went wide. I'm joking. Mostly. Just put it with the others. At the bottom of the second trunk, wrapped in tissue paper, was the dress May's mother had packed without asking, Rebecca's wedding gown. May stared at it. White silk and lace, delicate as spiderweb. It would never fit her. Even if it did, she'd never wear it. Ma'am? Annie was watching her carefully. Put this away, May said, somewhere I won't see it. The reception was held in the barn, which had been swept, decorated, and transformed into something approaching civilized. Long tables groaned under platters of food. A band played from a small stage. And everywhere were people. May stood at the entrance in the best dress she owned, a dark green cotton that at least fit properly, and wanted to die. Caleb appeared at her elbow. He'd changed into a fresh suit. Ready? No. Good. Neither am I. He offered his arm. But we're going to do this anyway. They entered together. Conversation didn't stop exactly, but it changed. Became pointed. Loaded. Edmund Rohr held court near the head table, accepting congratulations with the air of a man who'd just closed a profitable deal, which May supposed he had. Smile, Caleb murmured. You look like you're facing a firing squad. Aren't I? More like a gauntlet, but same general principle. The first hour was a blur of introductions. Ranchers and merchants, town officials and territorial politicians, all coming to shake Caleb's hand and examine his unexpected bride. Some were polite, some were openly curious. A few were cruel in the way people are when they think they're being subtle. Such a surprise, one woman said, fanning herself. We'd all expected dear Rebecca, but I'm sure you'll do just fine. She's very sturdy, another added. I'm sure that's useful on a ranch. May smiled until her face hurt and said nothing. And then Clara Rohr swept in. May saw Caleb tense beside her and knew, instantly, that this was trouble. Clara was beautiful, not in Rebecca's delicate way, but striking, tall, dark-haired, with features carved from the same granite as her brother. She wore a dress of deep burgundy silk that probably cost more than May's family's annual income, and she moved through the crowd like a queen surveying her subjects. When she reached May and Caleb, her smile was sharp as broken glass. Brother, she kissed Caleb's cheek. What an interesting choice. Clara, this is my wife, May, my sister Clara. The substitute bride, Clara said. Her voice was honey over poison. How terribly romantic, like something from a novel. It's a pleasure to meet you, May said evenly. I'm sure. Clara's eyes traveled over her, lingering on every flaw. I do hope you'll forgive the household's unpreparedness. We weren't expecting you. I wasn't expecting me either. Clara's smile widened. How delightfully honest. We'll get along splendidly, I'm sure. She drifted away, leaving something cold in her wake. She hates me, May said. She hates everyone except Father, Caleb replied. Don't take it personally. But it was hard not to take it personally when Clara spent the rest of the reception holding court, making subtle comments about how different things were going to be now, how she hoped the new Mrs. Rohr would be able to manage such a large household, how challenging it must be to step into shoes meant for someone else. May endured it. She smiled. She thanked people for their congratulations. She pretended this was normal, that she wasn't screaming inside. And when her parents finally approached, her father gray-faced and shaken, her mother still crying, May almost broke. I'm so sorry, her mother whispered. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. It's done. May's voice was flat. The ranch is saved. That's what matters. Her father gripped her hand. His fingers were trembling. You're a good girl, May. The best daughter a man could ask for. May pulled away. She couldn't let him see her cry. Couldn't let anyone see. I need some air, she said to Caleb. I'll come with us. No. She forced a smile. I just need a moment. She slipped out the side door before he could argue. The night air was cool against her burning face. May walked around the barn, away from the lights and noise, until she found a fence overlooking the dark expanse of Roarland. She gripped the top rail and let herself shake. In one day, her entire life had been torn apart and rebuilt. She'd gone from May Hart, spinster and ranch hand, to May Roar, wife and mistress of a household she knew nothing about. She'd been humiliated in front of 200 people, married a stranger, and walked into a house full of enemies. And for what? To save a ranch that would never be hers. To fix a problem she didn't create. To be useful one more time. You handled that better than I expected. May spun. Clara stood behind her, wineglass in hand, looking amused. You followed me. I wanted to see if you'd run, like your sister. Clara took a sip of wine. But you're not a runner, are you? What do you want? To understand what you're doing here, Clara moved closer. My brother doesn't need a wife. He has me to manage the household. He has father to advise him. He had a perfectly good arrangement with your beautiful little sister, and then you came along and ruined it. I didn't ruin anything, Rebecca. Rebecca had the good sense to escape while she could. Clara's eyes glittered. You should have done the same. If I had, your father would have destroyed my family. Better your family than mine. May stared at her. You really think I'm a threat to you? I think you're an opportunist who saw a chance and took it. Clara's voice was cold. I think you trapped my brother into a marriage he didn't want, and now you're going to parade around like you belong here. Your brother trapped himself. And me. May's temper, held in check all day, finally snapped. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. But here I am, married to a man who sees me as a business arrangement and living in a house where everyone looks at me like I'm something they scraped off their boot. So if you're waiting for me to apologize for existing, you'll be waiting a long time. Clara blinked, clearly not expecting the outburst. I don't want your position, May continued. I don't want to run your household or manage your staff or whatever it is you think I'm after. I just want to survive this with some dignity and tact. So if you want to hate me, fine. Get in line. But don't pretend I'm the villain here. For a long moment, Clara just stared at her. Then, incredibly, she smiled. A real smile, not the sharp, false thing she'd worn earlier. Maybe you will survive, Clara said, if you don't let them break you first. Then she turned and walked back toward the barn, leaving May alone with the dark and her racing heart. When May finally returned to the reception, Caleb was waiting near the door. Where did you go? I needed air. Your sister found me. Caleb's jaw tightened. What did she say? That I'm an opportunist who trapped you into marriage. Clara always did have a flair for drama. Is she right? Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Do you think you trapped me? No, but I don't know what I think anymore. That's fair. Caleb glanced back at the reception, still in full swing. We need to stay another hour, then we can leave. And then what? And then you go to your room, and I go to mine, and we both try to forget this day ever happened. It should have been a relief. Instead, it just made May feel more alone. The last hour crawled by. By the time they finally left, May's face ached from false smiles and her feet were blistered in their good shoes. The house was dark when they returned, silent. Mrs. Porter had left a lamp burning in the hall. Caleb stopped at the door to May's room. If you need anything, I won't. He nodded, started to leave, stopped. For what it's worth, he said without looking at her, you were right. In the church. I should have stood up to my father, should have refused to go through with it. Why didn't you? Because refusing my father isn't something I've ever been good at. Caleb's voice was quiet. And because despite everything, I think this might work out. How? You're strong, practical. You don't want anything from me except to be left alone. That's more than most wives offer. May wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. Get some rest, Caleb said. Tomorrow starts early here. Then he was gone, footsteps fading down the hallway, leaving May alone in her beautiful blue room with its silk and mirrors and cold, empty luxury. She changed into her nightgown, washed her face, braided her hair with fingers that shook, and when she finally climbed into bed, a bed so soft it felt like floating, May Hart, who had become May Roar in the span of a single terrible day, finally let herself cry. May woke to the sound of someone moving in her room. She sat up fast, heart hammering, disoriented by the unfamiliar bed and the pale gray light filtering through curtains she didn't recognize. For one confused moment, she thought she was still at home, that yesterday had been a nightmare. Then she saw Annie setting a breakfast tray on the vanity table, and reality crashed back down. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Annie whispered. "I tried to be quiet. Mrs. Porter said to bring your breakfast at 6. May rubbed her eyes. They felt swollen from crying. "What time is it?" "Just past 6 now, ma'am." 6 in the morning. Back home, May would have already been up for an hour, feeding horses and checking water troughs. Here, apparently, she was expected to lie in bed while servants brought her food. "Thank you, Annie. You can leave it. Mrs. Porter also said to tell you that breakfast is served in the dining room at 7, and that Mr. Rohr expects you to join him." Annie hesitated. "She said you should wear something appropriate." Of course she did. May climbed out of bed, bones aching like she'd been beaten. "I'll manage." Annie bobbed a curtsy and fled. May picked at the breakfast, toast and eggs she didn't want, and tried to figure out what appropriate meant in Mrs. Porter's vocabulary. Probably not her work clothes. Definitely not the gray wool dress that had barely survived yesterday. She settled on a brown day dress with long sleeves and a high collar. It was plain but clean, and it actually fit. She twisted her hair into a bun, pinned it tight, and looked at herself in the mirror. Same face, same brown eyes, and unremarkable features. But now there was a ring on her finger and a new name attached to her like a brand. Mrs. Rohr. She wanted to break something. Instead, she went downstairs. The dining room was enormous. A long mahogany table that could seat 20, with high-backed chairs and a chandelier that probably cost more than her family's entire house. Morning light streamed through tall windows, making everything look sharp and hostile. Caleb sat at the head of the table, reading a newspaper. He glanced up when May entered, then stood. "Good morning." "Morning," May said. He pulled out the chair to his right. May sat, feeling ridiculous in this cavern of a room with just the two of them. A woman May didn't recognize appeared with a coffee pot. She filled May's cup without speaking, then disappeared back through a door that presumably led to the kitchen. "That's Mrs. Brennan," Caleb said. "She does most of the cooking. There's also Tom, who manages the stables, and about 15 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse. I'll never remember all their names." "You will. Give it time." Caleb folded his newspaper. "My father wants to see us after breakfast, in his study." May's stomach clenched. "Why?" "To discuss household arrangements, your responsibilities." Caleb's tone was neutral, but something in his posture suggested he wasn't looking forward to it either. "And Clara?" "Still asleep, probably. She's not an early riser." They ate in silence for a while. The food was good, better than anything May had cooked at home, but it tasted like ash in her mouth. "How did you sleep?" Caleb asked eventually. "Fine." The lie came easily. Liar, but he said it without heat. "I didn't sleep either." May looked at him, really looked, for the first time since yesterday. He had shadows under his eyes, and there was tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "Going through with the marriage." Caleb considered this. "I regret the circumstances. I regret that you were put in an impossible position." He paused. "But no, I don't regret marrying you instead of your sister." "Why not?" "Because Rebecca would have made both of us miserable. She wanted romance, love, all the things I can't give." His dark eyes met hers. "You just want to be left alone. That's something I can manage." It should have stung. Instead, it was almost a relief. "What about what you want?" May asked. "I want a functioning household and a wife who won't cause problems. So far, you're delivering." "It's been less than 24 hours. "Then you're off to a good start." May almost smiled. Almost. Edmund Rohr's study was on the second floor, overlooking the ranch's main compound. It was a room built to intimidate. Walls lined with books, a desk the size of a small wagon, hunting trophies mounted like warnings. Edmund sat behind the desk, writing something in a leather-bound ledger. He didn't look up when they entered. "Sit," he said. May and Caleb sat in the two chairs facing the desk. May folded her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. Edmund finished whatever he was writing, blotted the ink, and finally looked up. "I've reviewed the household accounts," he said without preamble. "We spend approximately $600 per month on staff wages, food, supplies, and maintenance. That's your budget. You'll present me with itemized expenses at the end of each week." May blinked. "I thought Caleb said I'd have full authority over household accounts." "You do, within reason." Edmund's smile was thin. "But this is still my house, my money, and I don't tolerate waste or theft. I've never stolen anything in my life. I'm sure your sister said the same thing before she ran off." The barb hit home. May felt her face heat, but she kept her voice level. "I'm not my sister." "No, you're not." Edmund leaned back in his chair. "Your sister was useless, decorative, but useless. You, on the other hand, claim to be practical, capable. We'll see if that's true." He slid a stack of papers across the desk. May picked them up. Invoices, supplier contracts, staff schedules, a month's worth of household business. "These are last month's records," Edmund said. "Review them, find the inefficiencies. Present me with recommendations by Friday." It was a test. Obviously a test. May flipped through the papers. Even at a glance, she could see problems. They were paying too much for flour. The laundry service was charging rates that suggested either incompetence or outright fraud. And someone had ordered 36 candles when they had electric lights in half the house. "Friday," May said. "Good." Edmund turned his attention to Caleb. "The Patterson cattle deal closes next week. I'll need you in Cheyenne for 3 days." Caleb's expression didn't change, but May felt him tense beside her. "I just got married. And now you have a wife who can manage things while you're gone, unless you think she's incapable." It was a trap. If Caleb objected, he'd be implying May couldn't handle the responsibility. If he agreed, he'd be abandoning her after less than a week of marriage. "I'm sure May will be fine," Caleb said carefully. "Excellent. You leave Monday." Edmund picked up his pen, already dismissing them. That's all. They left the study in silence. May waited until they were halfway down the hall before speaking. "He's testing me." "He tests everyone." "What happens if I fail?" Caleb stopped walking. "Then it'll make your life difficult. More difficult than it already is." He paused. "But you won't fail. You're too stubborn." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." May looked down at the stack of papers in her hands. A month of household records. Proof of everything that had been Clara's domain until yesterday. "Your sister isn't going to like this," May said. "My sister doesn't like anything that threatens her position." Caleb started walking again. "But she answers to my father, same as everyone else. If he wants you managing the household, that's what happens." "Even if she sabotages me?" "Especially if she sabotages you. My father respects strength. If you can handle Clara, you can handle anything." It wasn't exactly reassuring. May spent the rest of the morning in her room reviewing the household accounts. The more she read, the angrier she got. Someone had been skimming money. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to add up over time. Extra charges here, inflated prices there, small thefts disguised as legitimate expenses. And all of it had been happening under Clara's watch. May was making notes when someone knocked on her door. "Come in." Clara swept in wearing a blue silk dressing gown, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She looked like she'd just woken up, which, given that it was nearly noon, she probably had. "I heard my father gave you the accounts," Clara said without preamble. "He did." "Find anything interesting?" May set down her pencil. "Someone's been stealing." Clara's eyebrows rose. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a factual observation. Look at these invoices. The flour supplier is charging 8 cents per pound when the market rate is 6. The laundry service is billing for twice the actual linens, and someone ordered supplies we don't need and probably resold them." "And you think I'm responsible?" "I think it happened on your watch." Claire's expression went cold. "I've managed this household for 5 years. I've saved my father thousands of dollars through careful planning and smart purchasing. And now you, someone who's been here less than a day, think you can waltz in and accuse me of incompetence?" "I'm not accusing you of incompetence. I'm saying someone took advantage of you." "How generous." May stood facing Clara across the width of the room. I don't want to fight with you. I don't want your position or your father's approval or whatever you think I'm after. But Edmund gave me a job and I'm going to do it. If that means finding whoever's been stealing from this household, then that's what I'll do. Clara studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You really are different from your sister. So everyone keeps telling me. Rebecca wouldn't have noticed the discrepancies, and if she had, she would have smiled and ignored them. Clara moved to the window, looking out over the ranch. You're going to make enemies, you know. Mrs. Porter has been here for 20 years, Mrs. Brennan, 15. If you accuse them of theft, I'm not accusing anyone yet. I'm gathering information. My father will expect names. Then I'll give him names. When I have proof. Clara turned back, something like respect flickering across her face. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. This time Clara's laugh sounded almost genuine. Fair enough. She headed for the door, then paused. A word of advice. Don't trust anyone in this house. Not the servants, not the ranch hands, not even my brother. What about you? Especially not me. Clara smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'm the worst of them all. Then she was gone, leaving May alone with her notes and a growing sense that she'd just walked into a nest of vipers. By Friday, May had compiled a detailed report. 15 pages of itemized discrepancies, supplier comparisons, and recommendations. She'd interviewed every staff member, cross-referenced invoices with delivery records, and traced the pattern of theft back 18 months. The primary culprit was the laundry service, owned by Mrs. Porter's brother-in-law. They'd been overcharging by nearly 40%, splitting the difference with Mrs. Porter herself. Smaller thefts involved the flour supplier and a ranch hand who'd been ordering fence posts they didn't need and selling them to a neighbor. May presented her findings to Edmund in his study, Clara and Caleb both present as witnesses. Edmund read through the report in silence. When he finished, he set it down and looked at May with something that might have been approval. This is thorough. Thank you. These are also serious accusations. Do you have proof? May pulled out a second folder. Receipts, signed delivery logs, even a ledger she'd found hidden in the laundry room that showed the real numbers. Edmund examined each document carefully. The silence stretched until May wanted to scream. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Porter has worked for this family for 2 decades. I know. She practically raised my children after their mother died. I know that too. And you still want me to fire her? May met his eyes. I want you to do whatever you think is right, but if it were my household, I'd fire her today. Edmund's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Ruthless. I like that. He turned to Caleb. What do you think? Caleb had been silent throughout the presentation. Now he shifted in his chair. May's evidence is solid. If we overlook this, it sends a message that theft is acceptable. Clara? Clara had been staring at May with an unreadable expression. I think our new sister-in-law is more capable than any of us expected. Edmund nodded slowly. Very well. Mrs. Porter is terminated, effective immediately. So is her brother-in-law's laundry service. The ranch hand, what was his name? Davies. Davies is fired as well. You'll oversee the hiring of replacements. Edmund slid the report back across the desk. And from now on, you'll present accounts to me monthly, not weekly. I don't have time to micromanage someone competent. It was the closest thing to praise May had ever heard from him. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me. Just don't prove me wrong. Firing Mrs. Porter was the hardest thing May had done since agreeing to marry Caleb. The housekeeper stood in the front hall, ramrod straight, while May explained the situation. Her face showed nothing, but her hands shook. 20 years, Mrs. Porter said quietly. 20 years I've given this family. I know. And you've been here less than a week. I know that too. This is a mistake, Mrs. Rohr, a terrible mistake. May forced herself to hold the woman's gaze. If you have evidence that contradicts my findings, I'll present it to Mr. Rohr, but otherwise this decision is final. Mrs. Porter's expression hardened. You'll regret this. Women like you always do. She left without another word, taking her personal belongings and 20 years of household knowledge with her. May stood in the empty hall, feeling sick. That was well done. She turned to find Caleb in the doorway to his study, watching her. It didn't feel well done, May said. It never does. But it was necessary. He crossed to her, and for a moment May thought he might offer comfort, a hand on her shoulder, some gesture of support. Instead, he just said, "You're stronger than I thought." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I just kicked a dog." "Mrs. Porter was stealing from my family. You caught her. That's not cruelty. It's justice." "Justice doesn't make me feel less terrible." Caleb studied her face. "If you want to back out of this arrangement, now's the time, before you're in too deep." May almost laughed. "I'm already in too deep. I married you, remember? Marriages can be annulled. Not this one. Not without destroying my family." May shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere, Caleb. You're stuck with me." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "Then we'd better make the best of it." He held out his hand. May looked at it for a moment, this formal, businesslike gesture, then shook it firmly. "Partners," she said. "Partners," Caleb agreed. It wasn't love. It wasn't even friendship. But it was something solid to build on. Caleb left for Cheyenne on Monday morning, taking 2 ranch hands and a wagon full of supplies. May stood on the porch and watched him go, feeling more alone than she had since arriving at Thornfield Ranch. "He'll be back in 3 days, Clara said from behind her. May didn't turn. "I know. And in those 3 days, you'll be in charge, completely." "I know that too." "The staff won't make it easy, not after what you did to Mrs. Porter." May finally turned to look at her sister-in-law. Clara was dressed for riding, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. "Are you going to make it easy?" May asked. Clara smiled. "What fun would that be?" She headed for the stables, leaving May alone on the porch. The first day without Caleb was quiet. May interviewed potential replacements for housekeeper, 3 women from town, all competent, all wary of the young Mrs. Rohr who'd fired the previous tenant after less than a week. May chose the youngest, a widow named Sarah Grant, who had sharp eyes and didn't flinch when May mentioned the reason for the vacancy. "I don't steal," Sarah said bluntly, "and I don't tolerate it in others. If you want someone who'll run a tight household and not cause drama, I'm your woman." "You're hired." Sarah started the next day. The second day, May reorganized the kitchen storage, updated the supplier contracts, and discovered that the ranch's bookkeeping system was a disaster. Income and expenses were tracked in 3 different ledgers, none of them reconciled. It would take weeks to sort out. She was neck-deep in receipts when Annie appeared in the doorway to the study. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you." "Who?" "Your mother, ma'am." May's heart sank. She hadn't seen her parents since the wedding reception. Hadn't wanted to. But she couldn't turn her mother away. "Show her to the sitting room." Her mother looked smaller than May remembered. Older. She wore her good dress and clutched a basket like a shield. "May." Her voice cracked. "Oh, sweetheart." May stood stiffly as her mother embraced her. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you. Had to make sure you were all right." Her mother pulled back, examining May's face. "You look tired." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're miserable. Anyone can see it." May moved to the window, arms crossed. "What did you expect? I married a stranger to save the ranch. I'm living in a house where half the staff hates me and the other half is waiting for me to fail. Fine isn't exactly on the menu." "Then come home." May turned. "What?" "Come home. We'll figure something else out. Sell the ranch, move east, start over." Her mother's eyes were desperate. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to sacrifice yourself." "Yes, I do." May's voice was hard. "Because if I don't, everything Papa worked for is gone. Everything 3 generations of hearts built. Gone. Your father would rather lose the ranch than lose you." "Would he?" "Because he didn't say that when he was negotiating Rebecca's marriage. He didn't say it when you sent me to that church to apologize." Her mother flinched. "I'm not blaming you," May said, softer now. "I'm not. But the choice is made. I'm married. I'm a Rohr now. And I'm going to make this work because that's what I do. I fix things." "You shouldn't have to fix this. But I do." May crossed back to her mother, took her hands. They were rough from work, just like May's. "Go home, Mama. Take care of Papa. Let me handle this. You're too young to be this hard." I'm exactly as hard as I need to be. Her mother stayed for another hour, making small talk that felt like pulling teeth, before finally leaving. May watched the carriage disappear down the drive and felt something crack in her chest. She'd told her mother the truth. She was going to make this work. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. The third day, everything fell apart. May woke to shouting outside. She dressed quickly and ran downstairs to find chaos in the front yard. One of the ranch hands, a man named Cooper, was on the ground, blood streaming from his nose. Another hand stood over him, fists clenched. "What happened?" May demanded. "He called you a name," Annie said quietly. She was standing on the porch, wringing her hands. "A bad one. And Tom heard and—" The standing man, Tom, the stable manager, spat on the ground. "No one talks about Mrs. Rohr that way." May's stomach twisted. She looked at Cooper, still on the ground, and then at the dozen other ranch hands who'd gathered to watch. "Get him to the bunkhouse," she told Tom. "Clean him up. He should apologize. Now, Tom." Tom hesitated, then nodded. He hauled Cooper to his feet and half-dragged him away. The other hands dispersed slowly, muttering among themselves. May stood in the yard, aware that every eye was judging, measuring, waiting to see what she'd do next. Clara appeared on this porch, coffee cup in hand. "Well, that was exciting." "Shut up, Clara." Clara's eyebrows rose, but she said nothing. May went back inside, climbed the stairs to her room, and locked the door. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and put her head in her hands. She was 22 years old. She'd been married for less than 2 weeks. And she was supposed to command the respect of men twice her age who thought she was nothing but a replacement bride who'd trapped their boss. She wanted to scream or cry or run the way Rebecca had run. Instead, she took a breath, then another. And when her hands stopped shaking, she stood up and went back downstairs. There was work to do. Caleb returned that evening, riding in just after sunset. May watched from the porch as he dismounted, handed his horse to Tom, and climbed the steps. He looked exhausted. 3 days of hard riding and harder negotiations had left shadows under his eyes and dust coating his clothes. "How did it go?" May asked. "Deal's done. Patterson's cattle are ours." He studied her face. "What happened here?" "Nothing I couldn't handle." "May." She told him about Cooper, about Tom, about the fight in the yard. Caleb's expression went progressively darker. "I'll fire him," he said when she finished. "No. He called you?" "I know what he called me. And Tom already handled it." May straightened her shoulders. "If you fire every hand who insults me, we won't have a crew left." "Then what do you want me to do?" "Nothing. I want you to do nothing." May met his eyes. "I need to earn their respect myself, not have it forced by my husband. Otherwise, this will never work." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He nodded slowly. "All right, but if it happens again..." "If it happens again, I'll deal with it then." They went inside together. Clara was waiting in the sitting room, pretending to read. "How was Cheyenne?" she asked Caleb. "Profitable?" "And how was managing the household?" This to May, with a sharp smile. "Educational," May said evenly. "I heard about the fight, quite the scandal." "It's handled." "Is it?" Clara set down her book. "Half the hands think you're a tyrant for firing Mrs. Porter. The other half think you're weak because you didn't fire Cooper. You can't please everyone, sister dear." "I'm not trying to please everyone. I'm trying to run a household." Same thing, really. May was too tired for this. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish." She left before Clara could respond. In her room, May found a stack of letters on her desk. Invitations, mostly, to teas and socials from women in town who wanted to inspect the substitute bride up close. She sorted through them mechanically, making notes about which to accept and which to politely decline. At the bottom of the stack was a letter with no return address. May opened it and froze. The handwriting was Rebecca's. "May, I heard about what happened, about the wedding. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to..." "That's a lie. I did mean for it. I ran because I'm a coward, and I knew you'd fix it because that's what you do. You fix everything. I'm in Denver, working as a seamstress. It's hard work, nothing like home, but I'm free. And I know that's more than you have now. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't help. But I am. R." May read the letter 3 times, hands shaking with an anger so fierce it left her breathless. Rebecca was sorry. Rebecca was free. Rebecca had chosen herself and left May to clean up the wreckage. May wanted to burn the letter, wanted to ride to Denver and scream at her sister until her voice gave out. Instead, she folded it carefully and put it in the bottom of her trunk, beneath the wedding dress she'd never worn. Then she went back to her invitations, her household accounts, her careful cataloging of everything that needed fixing. Because that's what she did. She fixed things. 2 months into the marriage, May finally stopped flinching when someone called her Mrs. Roar. She'd settled into a routine that felt almost normal if she didn't think about it too hard. Mornings reviewing accounts with Sarah Grant, who'd proven to be worth twice what May paid her. Afternoons managing suppliers, inspecting the kitchen, settling disputes between staff. Evenings dining with Caleb and Edmund and sometimes Clara, making polite conversation about cattle prices and weather patterns while pretending they were a real family. The ranch hands had stopped openly mocking her, though she still caught whispers when she walked past the bunkhouse. The staff in town no longer stared quite so hard when she went to the mercantile. And Caleb had started asking her opinion on business matters, which felt like progress even if his tone remained carefully neutral. May told herself this was enough, that she could live with this cold approximation of marriage, this careful dance of mutual tolerance. Then Rebecca's second letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday morning, tucked between an invoice from the feed supplier and an invitation to a church social May had no intention of attending. Same handwriting, same lack of return address. May almost threw it away unread. Almost. Instead, she opened it. May, I know you probably hate me. You have every right to, but I need you to know that I didn't run away on a whim. Something happened the week before the wedding. Something I couldn't tell Mama or Papa. I was attacked, on my way back from town. A man grabbed me near the old mill road. He said things, terrible things about the wedding, about how I should know my place. He hit me, tore my dress. I got away, but barely. I never saw his face, but I heard his voice, May, and I've been hearing it in my nightmares ever since. That's why I ran. Not because I was afraid of marrying Caleb Roar, because I was afraid of dying. I'm sorry I left you to deal with everything, but I couldn't stay. I just couldn't. R. May read the letter 3 times, her hands going progressively colder. Rebecca had been attacked, beaten, threatened. And she'd told no one. Just packed her things and run, leaving May to think she was selfish and cowardly when she'd actually been terrified. May felt sick. She found Caleb in his study, reviewing shipping manifests. He looked up when she entered, immediately noticing her expression. What's wrong? May handed him the letter without speaking. Caleb read it slowly, his face going hard. When he finished, he set it down carefully, like it might explode. When did this arrive? This morning. And you believe her? Why would she lie? To excuse what she did, to make herself the victim. Caleb's jaw was tight. Your sister ran away and left you to clean up her mess. Now she's trying to justify it. She was attacked, Caleb. She says she was attacked, but there's no proof, no witnesses. Just a convenient story that makes her look sympathetic. May felt anger flare in her chest. You think she's lying? I think she's manipulative. I think she knew exactly what would happen when she disappeared, and now she's trying to rewrite history. She said she didn't see the man's face. That means whoever did it is still out there. Or there was no attack at all. Caleb stood, crossing to the window. May, I know she's your sister, but you can't trust everything she says. I can't just ignore this. You can't investigate it either. It's been 2 months. The trail is cold. And even if it did happen, what are you going to do? Question every man in the county? May wanted to argue, wanted to defend Rebecca, but Caleb's logic was sound, and that made her angrier. So we do nothing? We live our lives. We don't let your sister drag us into whatever drama she's created. Caleb turned back to her. You're building something here, May. Don't let Rebecca destroy it. May left the study feeling hollow. She spent the rest of the day distracted, snapping at Annie over nothing and burning her hand on a pot because she wasn't paying attention. By evening, she'd worked herself into a state somewhere between fury and despair. At dinner, Edmund noticed. You look troubled, daughter. He never called her by name, only daughter, like she was interchangeable with Clara. I'm fine. Liar. Edmund cut into his steak with surgical precision. Caleb tells me you received a letter from your sister. May shot Caleb a look. He met it without apology. She claims she was attacked, Edmund continued. Before the wedding. Yes. Do you believe her? May set down her fork. I don't know. An honest answer. Edmund chewed thoughtfully. Your sister is many things, but she's not a complete fool. If she was attacked, she would have told someone. Her parents, the sheriff, someone with the power to help. Unless she was too scared. Or unless it never happened. Clara had been silent throughout the exchange, pushing food around her plate. Now she spoke. What if it did happen? Everyone turned to look at her. What if Rebecca is telling the truth? Clara's voice was carefully neutral. What if someone in this county thought they could intimidate a heart bride into running? What would that mean for us? Edmund's eyes narrowed. It would mean someone tried to interfere with my business arrangement and failed because May stepped in. Or succeeded, Clara said, because they got exactly what they wanted. Rebecca gone, the Harts humiliated, and our family bound to a replacement bride who might not have been their first choice. The implication hung in the air like smoke. You think someone orchestrated this? May said slowly. Someone wanted Rebecca gone specifically. I think it's worth considering. Clara finally looked at May. You're capable, practical. Everything Rebecca wasn't. If someone wanted to ensure the Rohr family got a useful wife instead of a pretty one, scaring Rebecca away would accomplish that. That's insane, Caleb said. Is it? Clara turned to her brother. Think about it. Who benefits from May being here instead of Rebecca? We all do, Edmund said flatly. May has saved this household thousands of dollars. She's competent, efficient, and doesn't cause problems. Frankly, we should be grateful Rebecca ran. The casual cruelty of it hit May like a slap. I'm sitting right here, she said. Then you should appreciate the compliment. Edmund returned to his meal. Clara, your theory is interesting but irrelevant. Even if someone did frighten Rebecca away, they did us a favor. The matter is closed. The matter isn't closed if there's a violent criminal in this county, May said. Then report it to the sheriff. Let him investigate. Edmund's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. But don't waste my time with speculation. May excused herself before dessert, too angry to stay at the table. She went to her room and paced, Rebecca's letter clutched in her hand. Clara's theory kept circling through her mind, gaining weight with each repetition. What if someone had orchestrated Rebecca's disappearance? What if they'd known exactly how the Harts would respond, sending May to apologize, making her available for Edmund's trap? And if that was true, who would benefit? The obvious answer was Edmund himself. He'd wanted a competent wife for Caleb, not a decorative one. Scaring away Rebecca would have been efficient. But Edmund had seemed genuinely angry at the wedding. His rage hadn't felt performed. May was still pacing when someone knocked on her door. Come in. Clara entered, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. She handed one to May without asking. You look like you need this. May took the glass. The whiskey burned going down. Why did you bring that up at dinner? May asked. The theory about Rebecca. Because I wanted to see Father's reaction. Clara settled into the chair by the window. And because I think you deserve to know the truth, which is that my father is capable of almost anything if it serves his interests. Clara swirled her whiskey. He loved our mother, in his way, but when she got sick, he hired nurses and carried on with business as usual. When she died, he mourned for exactly 1 week, then started negotiating land deals again. That doesn't mean he attacked Rebecca. No, but it means he wouldn't lose sleep over it if someone else did. Clara met May's eyes. You should be careful. You're useful to him now, but usefulness is a dangerous thing to trade on. Is that a threat? It's advice. From one woman trapped in this family to another. May studied her sister-in-law's face, looking for the trap, but Clara just looked tired. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything, I don't hate you. Clara stood, moving toward the door. You're strong, stronger than I gave you credit for. And strong women in this family don't have an easy time of it. You seem to manage fine. Clara's laugh was bitter. Do I? I'm 25 years old, unmarried, with no prospects and no future except managing my father's household until I'm too old to be useful. You think that's fine? You could leave, get married, start your own life. With what money? What connections? Clara shook her head. Father controls everything. If I left, I'd have nothing. So I stay, and I manage, and I try not to think too hard about what my life could have been. She left before May could respond. May sat with her whiskey, thinking about strong women and usefulness, and the different kinds of traps that could bind you. Then she made a decision. The next morning, May rode into town. She hadn't left the ranch property since the wedding, too busy with household management and too aware of the stares she'd receive. But Rebecca's letter had lit a fire in her that wouldn't go out. She needed answers. The sheriff's office was a small building on Main Street, wedged between the telegraph office and a saloon. May tied her horse and went inside. Sheriff Morrison was a big man with a gray mustache and eyes that had seen too much. He looked up from his desk when May entered, recognition flickering across his face. "Mrs. Rohr, this is a surprise." "Sheriff?" May settled into the chair across from him without being invited. "I need to ask you about an incident that may have occurred 2 months ago." She told him about Rebecca's letter, about the attack near the old mill road. Morrison listened without interrupting, his expression growing progressively grimmer. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Your sister never reported an attack." "I know, she was scared." "Scared enough to run clear out of the territory, but not scared enough to tell the law?" Morrison shook his head. "Forgive me, Mrs. Rohr, but that doesn't track. She said she didn't see the man's face. Maybe she thought you couldn't help. Maybe. Or maybe it didn't happen." May felt her temper rise. Why would she lie? Why does anyone lie? To excuse bad behavior, to get attention, to cause trouble. Morrison pulled out a battered notebook. "But I'll look into it. Check with folks who travel that road regular. See if anyone saw anything." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Even if she's telling the truth, 2 months is a long time. Memories fade, evidence disappears." He studied May's face. "And between you and me, Mrs. Rohr, you might want to let sleeping dogs lie. Your sister made her choice. You made yours. Sometimes it's better not to dig up the past." May stood. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. She left before he could respond. May's next stop was the old mill road. It took her 20 minutes to find the spot Rebecca had described, a bend in the road where the trees grew thick and the ground dropped away sharply on one side. Isolated, perfect for an ambush. May dismounted and searched the area, not sure what she was looking for. Evidence of a struggle, maybe. Torn fabric. Blood. Something that would prove Rebecca had been telling the truth. She found nothing. 2 months of wind and rain had scrubbed the scene clean. She was about to give up when she noticed something odd. The fence post at the bend had fresh wood splinters near the base, like someone had kicked it hard. And there, caught in a crack, was a scrap of dark fabric. May worked it free carefully. It was wool, good quality, torn from something larger. A coat, maybe. Or a jacket. Not proof of anything. But not nothing, either. She tucked the fabric into her pocket and remounted. On her way back to the ranch, she passed the Hart property. Her father was in the north pasture, mending fence. He saw her and waved. May hesitated, then turned her horse toward him. "May." Her father dropped his tools and pulled her into a rough hug. "We weren't expecting you. I was in town. Thought I'd stop by." "How are you?" "Really?" He held her at arm's length, studying her face. "I'm managing." "That's not the same as being happy." "No, it's not." May looked past him at the ranch house, the barn, the land that had cost her everything. "Papa, I need to ask you something about Rebecca." Her father's expression closed down. "What about her?" May told him about the letter, about the attack. Her father listened, his face going progressively paler. "She never said anything," he whispered when May finished. "If she'd told me, if I'd known, would it have changed anything?" "Of course it would have. I would have gone to the sheriff, found the man, protected her." "Would you?" May kept her voice gentle. "Or would you have worried about the scandal, about what people would say, about whether it would affect her marriage prospects?" Her father flinched like she'd hit him. I'm not trying to hurt you, May said. I'm trying to understand. Because if Rebecca was too scared to tell you, there's a reason. You think I made her feel unsafe? I think you made it very clear that the Roar marriage was the only thing standing between us and ruin. And I think Rebecca heard that message loud and clear. Her father turned away, shoulders shaking. I did what I thought was best. For all of us. I know, but sometimes what's best for the family isn't what's best for the daughters. May mounted her horse again. Take care of yourself, Papa. And if Rebecca writes to you, tell her I'm trying to find out what really happened. She rode away before he could answer, feeling hollow. Back at the ranch, May found Caleb in the barn, examining a mare that was due to foal. He straightened when he saw her. Where have you been? Town, following up on Rebecca's letter. Caleb's expression darkened. I thought we agreed you'd let it go. You agreed. I didn't. May climbed down from her horse, every muscle aching. I talked to Sheriff Morrison. He's going to investigate. That's a waste of his time and yours. Maybe. But I found this. She pulled out the scrap of fabric. At the old mill road, where Rebecca said she was attacked. Caleb took it, turning it over in his hands. It's just cloth. Could have come from anywhere. It's good wool. Expensive. And it was caught in a fence post that showed signs of recent damage. That doesn't prove anything. It proves I'm not crazy for believing her. Caleb handed the fabric back, his jaw tight. What do you want from me, May? You want me to say your sister was attacked? Fine. Maybe she was. But that doesn't change anything. She still ran. She still left you to deal with the consequences. She was scared. So were you. But you didn't run. Caleb moved closer, and for the first time since their wedding, May saw real emotion in his face. You stood in that church and faced down 200 people who were mocking you. You married a stranger to save your family. You've spent 2 months earning respect from people who thought you were worthless. And you did it all without complaint, so forgive me if I don't have much sympathy for Rebecca's fear. May stared at him, caught off guard by the intensity in his voice. You think I'm brave, she said slowly. I think you're the bravest person I know. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even affection, just a simple statement of fact. And somehow, that made it mean more. Thank you, May whispered. Caleb nodded once, then turned back to the mare. Morrison won't find anything. The trail's too cold. I know. But you had to try anyway. Yes. That's the difference between you and your sister. She runs. You fight. Caleb glanced at her over his shoulder. Just be careful the fight doesn't destroy you. That night, May couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about bravery and fear and the different ways women survived. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Then Clara's voice, low and urgent, coming from Edmund's study. May slipped out of bed and crept to her door, opening it just enough to hear. Can't keep doing this, Clara was saying. Eventually someone will notice. Let them notice. Edmund's voice was cold. The ranch is profitable. That's all that matters. What about Caleb? What about... Caleb does what I tell him, as do you, as does May. A pause. Then Clara quieter. She's not stupid, Father. She's already asking questions about Rebecca. Then distract her. Give her more work. Keep her focused on household management. And if that doesn't work, then we'll deal with it, the same way we deal with all problems. May's blood ran cold. She eased her door shut and backed away, her mind racing. What problems had they dealt with, and how? She thought about Rebecca's attack, about the convenient timing, about Clara's theory at dinner. What if Edmund hadn't just benefited from Rebecca's disappearance? What if he'd arranged it? May spent the rest of the night going through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. By dawn, she'd made another decision. She was going to Denver. She waited until Caleb left for the south pasture, then found Sarah in the kitchen. I need to be away for a few days, May said. Personal business. Can you manage the household? Sarah didn't ask questions. Of course, ma'am. Don't tell anyone where I've gone. If Mr. Roar asks, say I went to visit my parents. Yes, ma'am. May packed a small bag, took money from her household budget, and left before anyone could stop her. The stage to Denver left at noon. May bought a ticket and climbed aboard, ignoring the curious stares of the other passengers. The ride took 12 hours. May spent most of it watching the landscape roll past, trying not to think about what she was doing, about the lies she'd told, about the household she'd abandoned, about what Caleb would say when he found out. Denver was bigger than May had expected. Buildings 3 and 4 stories tall, streets crowded with wagons and people. She asked directions to the garment district and started walking. Finding Rebecca took 4 hours. May went from shop to shop describing her sister, asking if anyone had seen her. Most people ignored her. A few told her to get lost. Finally, a woman in a small dress shop near the edge of town nodded. Blonde girl? Talks fancy? Yeah, she works upstairs, alterations. May climbed a narrow staircase to a room filled with fabric and half-finished dresses. And there, bent over a sewing machine, was Rebecca. She looked different, thinner. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and there were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. She glanced up when May entered, and the color drained from her face. May. Hello, Rebecca. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then Rebecca stood, hands shaking. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either. May set down her bag. But I need to know the truth. About what happened to you. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I told you in the letter. I know what you told me. Now I need to hear it in person. May's voice was harder than she intended. Because people are saying you lied, that you made it up to excuse running away. I didn't lie. Rebecca's voice cracked. It happened exactly the way I said. I was coming back from town and someone grabbed me. He said things about the wedding, about how I wasn't good enough for a roar, about how I should know my place. Did you recognize his voice? No. He was behind me the whole time. I never saw his face. What did he sound like? Young? Old? Local? Rebecca closed her eyes, remembering. Older, I think. His voice was rough, like he smoked a lot. And he had an accent. Not from Wyoming. Where from? I don't know. South, maybe? Texas or Missouri? Rebecca opened her eyes. Why does it matter? You believe me, don't you? May wanted to say yes. Wanted to comfort her sister, tell her everything would be fine. But she couldn't shake Clara's words, or Edmund's cold voice in the study. I believe something happened to you, May said carefully. I'm just trying to figure out who's responsible. What do you mean? May told her about the scrap of fabric, about Clara's theory, about Edmund's conversation with Clara that she'd overheard. Rebecca listened, her face going progressively whiter. You think someone in the Rohr family attacked me to make me run? I think it's possible. But why? They wanted me to marry Caleb. The wedding was their idea. They wanted a Hart daughter to marry Caleb. Maybe they didn't care which one. May pulled out a chair, suddenly exhausted. Think about it, Rebecca. You're beautiful, but you're not practical. You can't manage accounts or run a household. I can. If someone wanted to ensure Caleb got a useful wife instead of a decorative one, they'd scare me away and trap you instead. Rebecca sat down hard. That's insane. Is it? Look at what's happened. I'm managing their household, saving them money, making Caleb look good. Everything they wanted. And you're miserable. Yes. Rebecca reached across the table, taking May's hand. Her fingers were rough from sewing, nothing like the soft hands May remembered. I'm so sorry, Rebecca whispered. If I'd thought for a second that staying would put you in danger, you would have stayed and been miserable yourself. May squeezed her sister's hand. I don't blame you for running, Rebecca. I just need to know who to blame for making you run. They talked for hours. Rebecca described every detail she could remember about the attack. The smell of tobacco, the weight of the man's hands, the way he'd laughed when she screamed. By the time May left, it was full dark outside. What are you going to do? Rebecca asked. Go back, dig deeper, find proof. And if you find it, then I'll make them pay. May pulled on her coat. Stay safe, Rebecca, and write to me if you remember anything else. May? Rebecca's voice stopped her at the door. Are you happy? At all? May thought about Caleb calling her brave, about earning respect from the ranch hands, about the satisfaction of balancing accounts and solving problems. I'm useful, she said. That's better than nothing. The trip back to the ranch felt twice as long. May spent it planning, strategizing, trying to figure out how to prove what she suspected. She arrived home just after dawn to find Caleb waiting on the porch. He looked furious. "Where the hell have you been?" May climbed down from the stagecoach, every muscle screaming. "Denver. Denver." His voice was flat. "You disappeared for 2 days to go to Denver." "I needed to see Rebecca." "You needed—" Caleb stopped, visibly controlling his temper. "You can't just leave without telling anyone. Sarah said you went to your parents. Your parents said they hadn't seen you. I thought—" He stopped again, and May saw something in his face she hadn't expected. He'd been worried. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have." Caleb ran a hand through his hair. "Did you find her?" "Yes." "And?" "And she told me the same thing she wrote in the letter. Someone attacked her. Someone with a southern accent who smoked tobacco and knew about the wedding." May looked Caleb in the eye. "Someone who wanted her gone." Caleb's expression went carefully blank. "You can't prove that." "Not yet, but I will." "May—" "Don't." May's voice was sharp. "Don't tell me to let it go. Don't tell me it doesn't matter. Someone terrorized my sister. Someone in this county, maybe someone in your family, and I'm going to find out who." She walked past him into the house, leaving Caleb standing alone on the porch. May went straight to her room, locked the door, and finally let herself collapse. She'd been gone 2 days. 2 days of lies and travel and confrontation, and all she had to show for it was more questions. But she also had determination. Someone had hurt Rebecca. Someone had orchestrated this entire disaster, and May was going to make them answer for it, even if it destroyed everything she'd built. May didn't sleep. She sat at her desk until sunrise, going through every piece of paper she could find. Household records, staff files, correspondence between Edmund and various business associates. She was looking for something, anything that would connect the dots between Rebecca's attack and the Rohr family. What she found instead was a pattern. Edmund Rohr was meticulous about documentation. Every business deal, every land purchase, every contract had a paper trail, but there were gaps. Payments to individuals with no explanation. Cash withdrawals that didn't match any legitimate expense. And 3 years ago, a sum of $500 paid to someone named Jay Garrett with only the notation "services rendered." May copied the information into her own ledger, then put everything back exactly as she'd found it. A knock at her door made her jump. "May?" Caleb's voice. "Can we talk?" She opened the door to find him still in yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept either. "I'm listening." He pushed past her into the room, then stopped, seeming to realize what he'd done. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It's fine. What do you want?" Caleb turned to face her. "I want you to tell me what you're planning." "I'm not planning anything." "You're a terrible liar." He crossed his arms. "You went to Denver. You talked to Rebecca. You came back looking like you're ready to burn the whole world down. So what are you planning?" May studied his face, trying to read whether this was concern or control. "I'm going to find out who attacked my sister." "And then what?" "And then I'm going to make sure they face consequences. Even if it destroys your marriage, your position here." Caleb's voice was quiet. "Even if it destroys you?" "Yes." He was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. "All right." "All right?" "If you're determined to do this, I can't stop you, but I can help." May felt something crack in her chest. "Why would you help me?" "Because you're my wife, and because—" He stopped, then continued more carefully. "Because I'm tired of my father controlling everything. If he did this, if he orchestrated Rebecca's attack to get the wife he wanted for me, then he crossed a line." "You think he did it?" "I don't know, but I know he's capable of it." Caleb moved to the window, staring out at the ranch. "When I was 18, I wanted to go east for college. My father said no, said I needed to learn the ranch business. When I kept pushing, he made sure every school I applied to rejected me, bought off admission boards, spread rumors about our family's finances. By the time I figured out what he'd done, it was too late." "That's horrible." "That's Edmund Rohr. He doesn't argue, doesn't compromise. He just removes obstacles." Caleb turned back to her. "If Rebecca was an obstacle to getting you as my wife, he'd remove her without blinking." May pulled out the notes she'd made about the mysterious payments. Do you recognize the name J. Garrett? Caleb studied the paper, frowning. No, but that handwriting is my father's. $500 for services rendered. What kind of services cost that much? The kind you don't want documented. Caleb handed the paper back. Where did you find this? His study, in the ledger from 3 years ago. You went through his private papers? I had to start somewhere. Caleb laughed, sharp and humorless. You really are fearless. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. We need to find out who Jay Garrett is. And we need to do it without my father knowing we're looking. How? I have a friend in Cheyenne, works for the Territorial Records Office. He can search property records, business licenses, anything filed with the government. Caleb was already moving toward the door. I'll send him a telegram today. Caleb. May's voice stopped him. Why are you really helping me? He paused, hand on the doorknob. Because you deserve the truth. And because if my father did this, I need to know. He glanced back at her. And because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a business arrangement, at least for me. Then he was gone, leaving May alone with those words echoing in her head. The next 3 days were torture. May went through the motions of running the household while her mind spun with possibilities. She caught Clara watching her more than once, those dark eyes assessing, calculating. On the 4th day, Caleb received a response. He found May in the kitchen reviewing the week's menu with Sarah. I need to speak with my wife. Alone. Sarah took the hint and left. Caleb pulled a telegram from his pocket. Jay Garrett is James Garrett, former ranch hand, worked for the Taylor spread about 15 miles south. Left Wyoming 3 years ago after some trouble. Current whereabouts unknown. What kind of trouble? Assault charges. Beat a man nearly to death in a bar fight. The charges were dropped when the victim suddenly refused to testify. Caleb's jaw was tight. My father paid the victim's medical bills, $500. May felt cold. So Garrett owed your father a favor. A big one. The kind of favor that might include scaring off an unwanted bride. Caleb folded the telegram carefully. There's more. Garrett was seen in town the week before our wedding, stayed at the boarding house for 3 days, then disappeared. Did your friend find out where he went? No, but he found something else. Caleb pulled out a second paper. A bank record. Edmund made a withdrawal of $200 2 weeks before the wedding, cash. No explanation in the books. May's hand started shaking. That's when Rebecca was attacked. Yes. They stared at each other across the kitchen table, the truth settling between them like a physical thing. Your father paid James Garrett to attack my sister, May said slowly, to scare her away so I'd have to take her place. We don't know that for certain. Don't we? May stood, pacing. It all fits. The timing, the money, Garrett's history. Edmund wanted a capable wife for you, not a decorative one, so he arranged for Rebecca to disappear. If we accuse him without proof, then we need proof. May turned to face him. We need to find James Garrett. He could be anywhere by now, or he could be somewhere your father can reach him, somewhere he's keeping him available in case he needs him again. May grabbed Caleb's arm. Where would your father hide someone he wanted to control? Caleb thought for a moment. The old line shack, 20 miles north, near the property line. It's isolated, rarely used. My father keeps it maintained, but no one goes there except during winter roundup. Then that's where we look. They left at dawn the next morning, telling Edmund they were inspecting the northern boundary. Clara watched them go from her bedroom window, but said nothing. The ride took 3 hours. The line shack appeared as they crested a ridge, a small, weathered cabin surrounded by scrub brush and rocks. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was home. Caleb dismounted first, one hand on the pistol at his hip. May followed, heart hammering. The door opened before they reached it. The man who emerged was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair and a face like old leather. He looked at them with eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. Caleb roared. His voice was rough, exactly as Rebecca had described. Didn't expect to see you out here. Garrett, Caleb's hand didn't move from his gun. We need to talk. About what? About what you did to Rebecca Hart. Garrett's expression didn't change. Don't know what you're talking about. The hell you don't. May pushed forward, anger overwhelming caution. You attacked my sister 2 months ago on the old mill road. You threatened her, hurt her, made her so scared she ran away. Got no idea what this lady's talking about, Caleb. My father paid you. May's voice shook with fury. $200 to make Rebecca disappear, to clear the way for me to marry Caleb instead. Garrett shifted his weight, and May saw the calculation in his eyes. He was deciding whether to keep lying or cut his losses. I want to hear you say it, May said. I want to hear you admit what you did. And if I do, what then? Garrett looked at Caleb. Your daddy's going to protect me, just like he always does. I do his dirty work, he keeps me comfortable. That's the arrangement. Not anymore. Caleb's voice was ice. Tell us everything, or I turn you over to the sheriff right now. Garrett laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. The sheriff works for your daddy, boy. Everyone in this county does. You think he's going to arrest me on the word of some girl who ran away? He'll arrest you on my word, and my wife's, and the evidence we've collected. Evidence. Garrett spat in the dirt. You got nothing, just suspicions and guesses. May pulled out the scrap of fabric she'd found at the old mill road. This came from your coat. Dark wool, good quality, the kind Edmund would buy for someone he wanted to keep happy. Garrett's eyes narrowed. And we have the bank records, Caleb added. The payments, the timeline. It's enough to make people ask questions, enough to make my father look bad. That won't help you none. Edmund Rohr doesn't care what people think. No, but he cares about control. May stepped closer until she was nearly nose to nose with Garrett. And right now, you're a loose end, a problem that could expose him. How long do you think he'll let you live once he knows we're on to you? Fear flickered across Garrett's face. Good. He should be afraid. I want the truth, May said. All of it. And then I want you gone. Out of Wyoming. Far enough that you can't hurt anyone else. And if I don't cooperate, then I make sure Edmund knows you talked to us. Let him decide what to do with you. Garrett looked between May and Caleb, weighing his options. Finally, he jerked his head toward the cabin. Come inside. But don't leave this room, understand? Edmund finds out I talked. I'm a dead man. The cabin was sparse. A cot, a stove, some supplies. Garrett poured himself whiskey from a bottle that was already half empty. Edmund came to me 2 months before the wedding, he started. Said he had a problem. His son was engaged to the wrong heart girl. The pretty one was useless. Couldn't manage a household, couldn't handle the ranch. He wanted the practical one, the sister. May felt sick. He asked me to convince the blonde to run, said I should scare her good, not hurt her permanent, just make her scared enough to leave. Garrett took a long drink. Paid me $100 up front, $100 after it was done. How did you find her? May asked. Followed her from town. Waited till she was alone on the mill road. Grabbed her from behind, said some things about the wedding, about knowing her place. Roughed her up a bit. Not bad, just enough. You terrorized her. I did a job. Garrett's tone was flat. She ran like Edmund wanted. I got paid. That was supposed to be the end of it. But it wasn't, Caleb said. No, because then Edmund decided he liked having me around, said I was useful. Set me up out here, gives me enough to live on, calls on me when he needs something done. Garrett's laugh was bitter. I'm his attack dog, and I can't leave because he knows too much about what I've done. You could testify, May said. Tell the sheriff everything. Get immunity in exchange for your testimony. Against Edmund Rohr? I'd be dead before I made it to the courthouse. Not if we protect you. Garrett looked at her like she was insane. You can't protect me from Edmund. Nobody can. May turned to Caleb. Can we? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Maybe. If we move fast. If we get him to the territorial marshal before my father knows what's happening. The marshal's office is in Cheyenne, 2 days' ride. Then we leave tonight. Garrett shook his head. I ain't going nowhere. This is a death sentence. Staying here is a death sentence, May shot back. Edmund already knows we're investigating. It's only a matter of time before he figures out we've talked to you. When that happens, what do you think he'll do? The fear was back in Garrett's eyes. We can get you out, Caleb said. Get you safe passage to California, new identity, enough money to start over. But you have to testify. You have to give us everything. Garrett stared into his whiskey glass. He'll come after my family. You have family? A sister in Missouri. Edmund knows about her. May and Caleb exchanged glances. This was worse than they thought. "We'll protect her too," May said. "We'll send word, get her somewhere safe before Edmund can reach her." "How? You got no money, no connections? You're just—" "I'm a roar now," May interrupted, "and I have access to the household accounts. We can wire your sister money today. Get her on the first train west." "Edmund will notice." "Let him notice. By the time he figures out what we're doing, it'll be too late." Garrett studied May's face, looking for cracks in her resolve. He wouldn't find any. "All right," he said finally. "But we do this my way. We leave tonight, separate routes. You go direct to Cheyenne, I take the back trails. We meet at the marshal's office in 3 days." "And if you run?" "Then I run. But if I do, Edmund wins, and I'm tired of Edmund Roar winning." They spent the rest of the day planning. Caleb would tell Edmund they needed to inspect another section of property, buying them time. May would withdraw money from the household account and wire it to Garrett's sister with instructions to leave Missouri immediately. Garrett would gather what supplies he could carry and disappear into the hills. It was a desperate plan, probably doomed to fail. But it was all they had. May and Caleb rode back to the ranch in silence, both lost in thought. As they approached the main house, Clara stepped out onto the porch. "Father wants to see you," she said. "Both of you. Now." May's stomach dropped. Edmund's study felt smaller than usual, darker. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. "Clara tells me you've been spending a lot of time away from the ranch," he said without preamble. "We've been inspecting the property," Caleb replied. "Like you asked." "Don't lie to me, boy. I know you went to the line shack. I know you talked to Garrett." May felt the floor drop out from under her. "How?" Caleb started. "Did you think I wouldn't have eyes everywhere? That I wouldn't know every move you make?" Edmund stood slowly. "You disappoint me, son. And you," his gaze swung to May. "You've been trouble since the day you married into this family." "You had my sister attacked," May said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "You paid James Garrett to terrorize her so she'd run away." "I did what was necessary." The casual admission hit like a physical blow. "You admit it?" May could barely breathe. "You admit you had Rebecca beaten and threatened?" "I ensured my son got the wife he needed instead of the one he thought he wanted." Edmund's voice was cold. "Rebecca was useless. You are not. The attack served its purpose. She could have been killed. But she wasn't. She ran, just as I knew she would." Edmund moved around the desk, closer. "You think you're the hero in this story, May? You're not. You're a tool, a means to an end, and you've served your purpose admirably." "And now?" Caleb's hand was on his gun. "Now you'll forget this conversation ever happened. Garrett will remain where he is, under my control, and you'll both go back to your lives like nothing changed." "Or what?" May demanded. "Or I tell the entire territory that your sister is a liar who fabricated an attack to excuse her cowardice. I destroy what's left of your family's reputation. I foreclose on your father's ranch despite our agreement." Edmund's smile was a razor. "And I have Garrett kill your sister in Denver to keep her quiet, permanently." May lunged before she could think. Her hand cracked across Edmund's face with enough force to snap his head sideways. The room went deathly silent. Edmund touched his cheek, fingers coming away with a trace of blood from where May's ring had cut him. When he looked at her, there was murder in his eyes. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Get away from her." Caleb had his gun out now, pointed directly at his father. "We're done, both of us. We're going to the marshal, we're bringing Garrett, and we're telling them everything. You'll never make it out of this county alive. Maybe not, but we'll try." Caleb grabbed May's arm. "Move." They backed toward the door. Edmund didn't follow, just stood there watching with that terrible smile. "You think you've won," he said, "but you've just started a war you can't finish." They ran. May and Caleb grabbed what they could carry and headed for the stables. Tom was there, saddling horses. He looked up as they burst in. "Mr. Roar, what's—" "We need horses, fast ones. Don't ask questions." Caleb was already saddling his stallion. Tom looked between them, then nodded. "You're in trouble." "Yes." "The old man?" "Yes." Tom pulled 2 more horses from their stalls. "These are the fastest we got. Take them." "Tom, I've worked here 20 years. I know what Edmund Roar is. Tom thrust the reins into May's hands. Go, before he sends men after you. They mounted and rode hard, northeast toward Cheyenne. Behind them, May heard shouting, saw lights coming on in the main house. They had maybe an hour's head start, maybe less. We need to get Garrett, May shouted over the pounding hooves. We will, but first we need to make sure Edmund can't follow. Caleb turned them toward town, toward the telegraph office. They dismounted in a cloud of dust, and Caleb pounded on the door until the operator appeared, bleary-eyed. I need to send an urgent message to the territorial marshal in Cheyenne, Caleb said, and one to the governor's office. It's 3 a.m, Caleb threw money on the counter. Now. He composed 2 identical messages while May watched the road, expecting Edmund's men any moment. The messages were simple. Edmund Roar had orchestrated an assault to manipulate a marriage contract. There was a witness willing to testify. They were en route to Cheyenne with evidence. Sent, the operator said. They rode out of town as the eastern sky started to lighten. By the time they reached the line shack, Garrett was gone, but he'd left a note weighted down with a rock. Saw riders coming from the ranch. Edmund knows. I'm taking the canyon route. See you in Cheyenne if we both live that long. JG. We need to keep moving, Caleb said. They rode through the day and into the night, stopping only to rest the horses. May's whole body ached, but she didn't complain. Couldn't complain. They were in too deep now. On the second day, they spotted riders behind them. 6 men, maybe 7, riding hard. Edmund's men, Caleb said grimly. Can we outrun them? Not on tired horses. He scanned the landscape. But we can outsmart them. He led them into a series of rocky canyons where the horses had to pick their way carefully. Behind them, the riders slowed, forced to navigate the same treacherous path. They emerged on the other side as the sun was setting and pushed the horses to a gallop. By the time they reached Cheyenne, they were both half dead from exhaustion. The horses were lathered, stumbling, but they'd made it. The marshal's office was a stone building in the center of town. May and Caleb practically fell through the door. A man in a marshal's badge looked up from his desk. Can I help you? I'm Caleb Roar. This is my wife, May. We sent you a telegram 2 days ago about Edmund Roar. The marshal's expression sharpened. I got your message. That's quite an accusation. It's all true. And we have a witness who can prove it. Where's this witness? As if summoned, the door opened and James Garrett walked in. He looked like he'd been through hell, clothes torn, face bruised, but alive. I'm the witness, he said, and I'm ready to talk. The marshal looked between the 3 of them, then stood. I'll get the territorial prosecutor. This is going to be a long night. They spent 6 hours giving statements. Everything. Rebecca's attack, Edmund's payments, the pattern of control and manipulation. Garrett corroborated it all, providing dates, details, evidence that couldn't be ignored. When they finished, the prosecutor sat back looking shaken. This is enough to arrest Edmund Roar, maybe enough to convict him. When? May asked. Tomorrow. I'll have the paperwork ready by noon, and we'll ride out with a marshal's detail. He'll fight, Caleb warned. Let him try. The territorial governor has already been briefed. Edmund Roar's protection only goes so far. They left the office as dawn broke over Cheyenne. May felt hollowed out, barely able to stand. Caleb caught her as she stumbled. We did it. We started it, May corrected. The hard part comes next. Testifying? Living with what this means. May looked at him. You just destroyed your father, your family, everything. No, he destroyed it when he decided to play with people's lives. Caleb's jaw was set. I choose you, May. I choose the truth. Whatever comes next, we face it together. May felt tears sting her eyes. Why? Because somewhere between that church and now, you stopped being a business arrangement. You became the only person I trust. The only person I... He stopped, searching for words. The only person you... What? The only person I want standing next to me when the world burns down. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was close enough. May reached up and kissed him, just once, soft and brief. The first real kiss of their marriage. When she pulled back, Caleb was staring at her like she'd just rewritten his understanding of the universe. We should find a place to sleep, May said. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. They found a boarding house that would take them despite their disheveled state. The proprietor gave them one room with a bed barely big enough for two. May collapsed onto it fully clothed. Caleb sat in the chair by the window, keeping watch. "You can sleep too," May said. "Someone needs to stay alert, in case Edmund's men find us." "Then we take turns. 2 hours each." Caleb looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. He lay down next to her, careful to maintain distance. They fell asleep like that, two people bound by circumstance and choice, waiting for the storm they'd unleashed. May woke to sunlight streaming through thin curtains and the sound of horses in the street below. For one disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then she felt Caleb's arm draped across her waist, and everything came rushing back. They'd fallen asleep closer than they'd started. Sometime during the night, exhaustion had erased the careful distance they usually maintained. May could feel his breath against her neck, steady and warm. She should move, should wake him. But for just a moment, she let herself have this, the feeling of not being alone. Then Caleb stirred and the moment shattered. He pulled away immediately, sitting up. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's fine." May sat up too, running her hands through her tangled hair. "What time is it?" "Just past 8. Caleb moved to the window, peering through the curtains. "The street's busy, no sign of Edmund's men. They wouldn't come here, not with the marshal involved." "You don't know my father like I do. He doesn't stop just because the law gets involved." May joined him at the window. Down below, Cheyenne was waking up, merchants opening shops, wagons rolling past, people going about their ordinary lives. None of them knew that today would change everything. "The prosecutor said noon," May said. "That gives us 4 hours. 4 hours to prepare for war." They washed as best they could and went downstairs. The boarding house served breakfast in a small dining room that smelled like coffee and bacon. May forced herself to eat, even though her stomach was in knots. Across the table, Caleb pushed eggs around his plate without actually eating anything. "You should try to eat," May said. "I keep thinking about what happens after the arrest, after the trial. Claire's going to be left with nothing. The ranch hands will lose their jobs if the ranch goes under. Tom, Sarah, everyone. Edmund made his choices. Whatever happens is on him. That doesn't make it easier to watch." May reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold. "We're doing the right thing." "I know, but the right thing still hurts like hell." At 11:30, they walked to the courthouse. The prosecutor met them on the steps, a thin man named Wallace with wire-rimmed glasses and the air of someone who'd seen too many bad men go unpunished. "The marshal's gathering his detail now," Wallace said. 6 men, all armed. We'll ride out at 1 o'clock. And if Edmund resists?" Caleb asked. "Then we'll handle it. But I suspect he'll come quietly. Men like your father always think they can talk their way out of trouble." "You don't know him." "No, but I know the law." Wallace adjusted his glasses. "The territorial governor has taken a personal interest in this case. Edmund Rohr has been operating like he owns Wyoming for too long. It's time someone reminded him he doesn't." A commotion at the end of the street made them all turn. A carriage was approaching, black lacquered wood with the Rohr brand on the side. May's heart stopped. The carriage pulled up in front of the courthouse and Clara stepped out. She looked exhausted, her dark hair disheveled, her dress wrinkled like she'd slept in it. When she saw Caleb and May on the courthouse steps, something in her face cracked. "Thank God," she breathed. "I thought I was too late." Caleb descended the steps slowly. "Clara, what are you doing here?" "Trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life." Clara grabbed his arm. "You can't do this. You can't testify against father." "He orchestrated an assault, Clara. He terrorized an innocent girl to manipulate a marriage." "I know what he did." Clara's voice broke. "I've always known. But testifying won't fix it. It'll just destroy everything we have left." May joined them on the street. "Your father destroyed it when he decided playing with people's lives was acceptable." Clara turned to her, eyes blazing. "You don't understand. If father goes to prison, the ranch collapses. The bank will foreclose. Every contract, every deal, every alliance, gone. And what do you think happens to me? To the staff? To everyone who depends on the Rohr family?" "That's not our responsibility," Caleb said, but his voice wavered. "Isn't it? You're willing to burn down everything to punish one man. But it's not just him who'll suffer." Clara's hands were shaking. I'm not saying father was right. He wasn't. What he did was monstrous. But this public trial, this humiliation, it won't change anything. It'll just create more victims. So we should let him get away with it? May demanded. I'm saying there are other ways. Private justice. Force him to step down, transfer control of the ranch to Caleb, make restitution to Rebecca. Clara looked between them desperately. Punish him without destroying everyone else in the process. May felt something twist in her chest. Because as much as she hated to admit it, Clara had a point. Bringing Edmund down publicly would feel good, would feel like justice, but it would also hurt people who didn't deserve it. I need to speak with my wife, Caleb said. Alone. Clara nodded and stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Caleb led May around the side of the courthouse, out of earshot. What are you thinking? May asked. That Clara's right, and that I hate that she's right. Caleb leaned against the wall, looking defeated. If we go through with this, we'll be heroes for a day, and then we'll watch everyone we know lose everything. And if we don't go through with it, your father wins. He faces no consequences. He just keeps controlling people like they're chess pieces. Unless we make him face consequences another way. May studied his face. What are you proposing? We make a deal. Father steps down immediately, transfers full ownership of the ranch to me, pays restitution to Rebecca, enough that she never has to work again, and he leaves Wyoming for good. He'll never agree to that. He will if the alternative is prison. Caleb straightened. We have the evidence. We have Garrett's testimony. We have the marshal ready to arrest him, but we give him one chance to walk away quietly. And if he refuses, then we let the law take its course. May wanted to argue, wanted to say that Edmund deserved a public trial, deserved to be humiliated the way Rebecca had been humiliated. But she thought about Sarah, about Tom, about all the ranch hands who'd done nothing wrong but work for the wrong man. All right, she said finally. But I want to be there when you make the offer. I want to see his face when he realizes he's lost. They found Wallace and explained the situation. The prosecutor looked skeptical. You want to offer him a deal? After everything he did? We want to give him a chance to avoid destroying innocent people, Caleb said. If he refuses, we proceed with the arrest. But if he agrees, everyone wins. Except justice. Justice and vengeance aren't the same thing, May said quietly. Wallace considered this. I'll give you 2 hours. If he doesn't agree to your terms by then, we ride out and arrest him. No more negotiations. They took Clara's carriage back to the ranch, the three of them sitting in tense silence. Clara kept glancing at May like she was trying to figure out what had changed between the wedding and now. You're different, Clara said finally. When you first arrived, you were just trying to survive. Now you're fighting back? Leading. Clara's voice was quiet. You've become what Father wanted, just not the way he expected. I became what I needed to be. That's the same thing, isn't it? May didn't have an answer for that. The ranch appeared on the horizon and May's stomach clenched. She'd left here 3 days ago a fugitive. Now she was returning with the power to destroy everything Edmund had built, or the power to reshape it into something better. The carriage rolled to a stop in front of the main house. Edmund was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept. So you came back, he said as they climbed out. I'm surprised. Thought you'd run all the way to California. We came back to give you a choice, Caleb said. A choice. Edmund laughed, cold and sharp. You think you have leverage here? We have Garrett's testimony. We have bank records. We have evidence that you orchestrated an assault to manipulate my marriage. Caleb's voice was steady. The territorial marshal is ready to arrest you. The governor's office is watching. You're finished, Father. The only question is how finished. Edmund's expression didn't change, but May saw his hands tighten on the porch rail. What are you proposing? You step down, today. Transfer full ownership of the ranch to me. Pay Rebecca Hart $20,000 in restitution. And you leave Wyoming, permanently. $20,000, that's robbery. That's justice, May cut in. You had her beaten and terrorized. You destroyed her sense of safety. $20,000 doesn't come close to making that right, but it's a start. Edmund's gaze swung to her, cold as January. You've gotten brave, daughter. I've gotten tired of being afraid. And if I refuse this generous offer, Then we go back to Cheyenne and the marshal arrests you. You stand trial. Every dirty deal, every manipulated contract, every person you've controlled, it all comes out in public testimony. Caleb stepped closer. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, and the Roar name will be synonymous with corruption and cruelty. The silence stretched taut as wire. Edmund looked between the three of them, his son, his daughter-in-law. May could see the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of options. How long do I have to decide? He asked finally. 2 hours. Then the marshal rides out whether you've agreed or not. Edmund turned and walked into the house without another word. They waited in the sitting room, tension crackling like electricity. Clara paced. Caleb stared out the window. May sat perfectly still, hands folded, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. After 90 minutes, Edmund reappeared. I'll agree to your terms, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. On one condition. You're not in a position to make conditions, Caleb said. Nevertheless, I have one. The money for Rebecca comes from my personal accounts, not the ranch funds. The business remains solvent. Caleb glanced at May. She nodded slightly. Done. And I want it in writing, a contract that says if I meet these terms, no charges will be filed. Ever. We'll draw up the papers, May said. Then we have an agreement. Edmund looked at each of them in turn. You think you've won, but you've just inherited a nightmare. Running this ranch isn't like managing a household budget. It requires strength, ruthlessness, the ability to make hard choices. Then it's a good thing I learned from the best, Caleb said. Something flickered across Edmund's face. It might have been pride, or it might have been regret. I'll be gone by morning. The ranch is yours. He walked away without another word, climbing the stairs to his private suite. Clara let out a breath she'd been holding. I can't believe he agreed. He agreed because he's a survivor, May said. He knows when to cut his losses. What happens now? Now we make sure he follows through. Caleb was already moving toward the study, and we start figuring out how to run a ranch. They spent the rest of the afternoon drafting contracts, transferring accounts, notifying lawyers and bankers. Edmund stayed in his suite, packing. Clara helped coordinate everything with an efficiency that made May realize she'd been underestimating her sister-in-law. You should run the business side, May told Clara as they reviewed supplier contracts. You know the deals, the relationships. I can handle the household and books, but the real business, that's you. Clara looked surprised. You'd trust me with that? You've proven yourself, and we need someone who knows what they're doing. What about Caleb? Caleb will manage the ranch operations, the cattle, the land, the hands. May met Clara's eyes. But we do this together, all three of us. No more secrets, no more manipulation, just honest work. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might still lose everything. But there was something like hope in Clara's smile. By evening, the contracts were signed and witnessed. Edmund had transferred ownership, arranged the payment to Rebecca, and booked passage on the next stage east. He was leaving Wyoming for good, headed to relatives in Pennsylvania who probably didn't know they were about to inherit a problem. May stood in the hallway outside his suite, debating whether to say anything. Finally, she knocked. Come in. Edmund was sitting at his desk, writing something in a leather journal. He glanced up when May entered. Come to gloat? No, I came to tell you that what you did was unforgivable, and that I'll spend the rest of my life making sure nothing like it ever happens again. Noble. Edmund set down his pen. But you'll find it's harder than you think. Running an empire requires compromises, sacrifices. Eventually, you'll have to choose between your principles and your survival. Then I'll choose principles. We'll see. Edmund stood, facing her. You turned out better than I expected, stronger. If I'd known what you'd become, I might have done things differently. You knew exactly what I'd become. That's why you orchestrated everything. May held his gaze. The question is whether you regret it. Edmund was silent for a long moment. No, he said finally. I don't regret making sure my son got a capable wife. I only regret that you turned that capability against me. Goodbye, Edmund. Goodbye, daughter. May left before he could say anything else. Edmund Rohr departed at dawn the next morning, a solitary figure in a hired carriage, leaving behind 30 years of accumulated power and control. May watched from the porch as he disappeared down the drive and felt nothing but relief. "It's done," Caleb said beside her. "No, now it starts." They spent the next week putting out fires. Suppliers who'd had exclusive deals with Edmund demanded the same terms or threatened to stop deliveries. Ranch hands who'd been loyal to Edmund quit rather than work for his son. The bank called in loans that Edmund had been deferring through personal favors. But they handled it together. Caleb renegotiated supplier contracts, proving he could be just as shrewd as his father without the cruelty. Clara used her knowledge of territorial politics to secure new contracts and restore relationships Edmund had damaged. And May kept the books balanced, found efficiencies, and slowly rebuilt the household into something that ran on respect rather than fear. 2 weeks after Edmund left, Rebecca arrived. May was in the garden when a carriage pulled up. She looked up, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw her sister stepping out. Rebecca looked better than she had in Denver, healthier. There was color in her cheeks and strength in her bearing. She saw May and broke into a run. They collided in the middle of the yard, holding each other tight. "I got the money," Rebecca said, her voice thick with tears. "May, it's too much. I can't possibly accept." "You can and you will. It's restitution for what he did to you." Rebecca pulled back, studying May's face. "You did this. You brought him down. We brought him down. Me, Caleb, Clara, even Garrett." May took her sister's hands. "But yes, he's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." Rebecca's face crumpled. "I was so scared for so long. I thought I'd never be safe again." "You're safe now. And you can stay as long as you want." "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You're family." May squeezed her hands. "Stay, at least for a while. Let us take care of you for once." Rebecca stayed 3 weeks, long enough to heal some of the damage Edmund had done, long enough to laugh again, to sleep without nightmares, to remember what safety felt like, and long enough to see that May had built something real here. "You love him," Rebecca said one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky red and gold. "Who?" "Don't play dumb. Caleb. You love him." May considered denying it, but what was the point? "Yes, I do." "When did that happen?" "I don't know, somewhere between the wedding and the war. Between being useful and being valued." May smiled slightly. "It snuck up on me." "Does he know?" "Probably not. We don't really talk about feelings." "Maybe you should." "Maybe." May looked at her sister. "What about you? What are you going to do with $20,000 and a second chance?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "I'm going back to Denver, but this time I'm opening my own dress shop. No more working for someone else. No more being dependent." "You'll be brilliant at it." "I hope so." Rebecca leaned her head on May's shoulder. "Thank you for fighting for me, for believing me, always." When Rebecca left, May felt the loss like a physical ache. But it was the right kind of loss, the kind that came from watching someone you love step into their own strength. 3 months after Edmund's departure, the ranch was thriving. May stood in the newly renovated office, her office, not a borrowed study, reviewing the quarterly accounts. They'd turned a profit for the first time in 18 months. Supplier costs were down, staff morale was up, and the ranch's reputation was slowly recovering from Edmund's tarnish. Caleb appeared in the doorway, dust-covered from a day working the north pasture. "Still at it?" "Almost done." May set down her pen. "We need to discuss the Patterson expansion. The numbers look good, but the timing can wait until tomorrow." Caleb crossed to her desk. "You've been working 16-hour days for 3 months. You need to rest. So do you. Then we'll rest together." He held out his hand. May took it, letting him pull her to her feet. They walked outside, across the yard to the fence overlooking the western pasture. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. "Do you ever regret it?" Caleb asked. "Marrying me instead of walking away?" May thought about the past 4 months, the fear, the fights, the exhaustion, but also the victories, the slow building of trust, the moments of genuine partnership. "No," she said. "I don't regret it." Do you? Not for a second. Caleb turned to face her. You asked me once why I was helping you, why I chose to stand with you against my father. I remember. I didn't give you a complete answer then, because I didn't fully understand it myself. He took her other hand, holding both of them. But I understand it now. I help you because you're the strongest person I've ever met. Because you walked into an impossible situation and didn't just survive it, you conquered it. Because somewhere between that church and this moment, you stopped being my wife on paper and became my wife in truth. May's throat was tight. Caleb, I know this wasn't a love match. I know we started as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way it became more than that. At least for me. His dark eyes held hers. I love you, May. Not because you're useful or practical or capable, but because you're brave and stubborn, and you refuse to be anything less than exactly who you are. May felt tears sting her eyes. You're sure? Because I'm still the same plain sister who got married in an ill-fitting dress. You were never plain. I was just too stupid to see it. Caleb cupped her face in his hands. You're extraordinary, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. May kissed him then, properly this time. Not the brief, desperate kiss in Cheyenne, but something deeper. A promise. A choice. When they pulled apart, Caleb was smiling. A real smile, not the careful mask he usually wore. Is this the part where we renegotiate our marriage contract? May asked. I was thinking we burn the old one and start fresh. No separate bedrooms? Not unless you want them. I don't. Good. Caleb pulled her close and May let herself lean into him. Because I'm done pretending this is anything less than real. They stood there as the sun set, two people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and chose each other anyway. 6 months later, May stood in front of the Cattlemen's Association, presenting a proposal for cooperative purchasing that would save every ranch in the county thousands of dollars. The room was full of men who'd once mocked her as the substitute bride, the lesser sister. Now they listened. When she finished, they voted unanimously to adopt her plan. Caleb was waiting outside the meeting hall, leaning against their carriage. How'd it go? They approved everything. May couldn't stop smiling. Every single proposal. Of course they did. You're brilliant. I'm thorough. There's a difference. You're both. Caleb helped her into the carriage. And you're mine, which makes me the luckiest man in Wyoming. May laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. That's a low bar. Maybe, but I'll take it. They drove back to the ranch as evening settled over the valley. The main house glowed with lamplight, welcoming them home. Sarah had dinner waiting. Clara was probably in her office, reviewing contracts for a new shipping deal. Everything ran like clockwork now, each person in their proper place. But it was more than efficiency. It was family. As they climbed the porch steps, May paused, looking back at the land spreading out in every direction. Land that had been bought with her sister's fear and her own sacrifice. Land that she'd fought to keep, to reshape, to make into something worthy of the cost. What are you thinking? Caleb asked. That a year ago, I was mucking out horse stalls and dreading my sister's wedding, and now you run one of the most successful ranches in the territory. Now I'm home. May took his hand. Finally, home. They went inside together, closing the door on the past and stepping into the future they'd built with their own hands. The woman who'd once been the unwanted sister, the substitute bride, the second choice, had become exactly what she was always meant to be. Not a replacement for someone else, but the first and only version of herself. Strong, capable, loved, and finally free.